You've been asked to do all kinds of biblical films since 2004, The Passion of the Christ. You've turned them all down, but now you said yes to Paul the Apostle of Christ. What is it about this film that made you want to say yes?
Well, the reality of what's going on in the world today and how this, I guess I always saw the Bible as being very relevant. You can look at a history book of the Third Reich, you know, and read about it, and the horrors of what went down. You can read that in ours. You can read about Nero, which you do see in this film, and what he did to Christians and everything, but there's some power that goes through your heart that bypasses your mind and gets in your heart when you read it. And the guy, Andrew Hyatt, that wrote it, he didn't change any of that, and he did it in such an organic way that you don't feel like when you're watching it, you're being thumped over the head. In the Paul the Apostle of Christ, the greatest controversy of this movie is to forgive at all cost, right? That's dying to oneself. People see that as meekness, they see it as weakness, but it is not. It's meeting evil face to face with love.
You think about that incredible redemption in the story of Paul. He is kind of like the leader of ISIS today. Yeah. And then he becomes this gigantic Christian leader in history. You know, when you think about that kind of theme, what does it teach you about who God is and who he's asking us to be?
Well, let's go back to where might, I've mentioned this before, Saul means great one, Paul means little one. By just one little change of a letter, in order for us to be great in the eyes of God, we have to become very small if we wish to be great. Saul, where was his fall? Where did it happen? Often people say, well, God threw him off the horse. Yes, but it didn't start there. Let's look back when Stephen, the first martyr, happened. Did Stephen have a peace coming through him that was so magnificent? What was he looking at? He was looking at Jesus, wasn't he? I see Jesus sitting at the right hand of the Father, coming in the clouds of heaven, repeating what our Lord said, and he's saying it. And now Saul has to justify this. Why are you persecuting? That's where it happened. That's where the break started happening, crumbling. And he had no answer for it. He had to justify it with his anger, you see, as we often do. And it probably just ate away at him until he was finally ready to hear it. And God, at that moment when he was ready to hear it, he threw him off his horse. And that became the seed that had to die in order to be rebirthed in something great. So you see him in the prison, and he gladly dies then. He takes the place of Stephen and dies for us, to be Christ to us in this book. And Luke risks everything he can, and even to die into his self and his self-pride. And he writes about it. And Saul needed a guy like that. Paul needed a guy like that that could write kind of what, here we are when we're just magnificent, here we are when we're not so great, when we're full of ourselves. And every day, if you're ready to die, and it's time, then that's, but we don't know when that time's going to be. But it's important to be ready to die every day. And what's ready to die? It's having that joy in our hearts, knowing that Jesus died for us. If we have that, we have everything. Even if we don't necessarily have the monetary thing, I always say, be happier with much less.
You play Luke, as you said, and that relationship between Luke and Paul is so interesting. You guys really dived into that. What did you learn about kind of this mysterious figure, Luke, that we don't hear a lot about? As you really, like, I know you pray a lot into your characters. What do you think you learned from him as you took him on?
Every time I do a film like this, I'm always brought closer to him, especially from doing The Passion. And I'll tell you, that is not a film that, I remember Dennis Quaid told me one time, after we were doing Frequency, he says, my only advice to you is never play Superman and never play Jesus.
Apparently you didn't listen to him at all.
No, I didn't. But I'm glad I didn't. Later on, we were to see each other, and he says, well, this was at the Cannes Film Festival, and, you know, they weren't so nice there, but, you know, the people did come out in droves, and they did love that film, so they should be careful what they say about our Lord. But Dennis Quaid said to me very eloquently, he says, if you never do another movie the rest of your life, you did the film.
You have an experience that I guess only martyrs usually understand. or people who've been imprisoned. And I think it's a beautiful thing, a painful thing, and you paid a big price for it. But I think you've given a gift, and I hope that you continue to have great opportunities to make great art that increases our faith and our understanding of who God is and who He is in us.
Pray for this film. Pray for the resurrection. Pray for that. And we need your prayers, guys.
We'll pray for you.
I'll need them.